I can't explain why people are salty. I can say I am not salty in one iota. They're measuring just like you did. You're measuring Bitcoin from a piece of paper versus what Bitcoin actually is.
Gold is dropping, Bitcoin is under pressure, everyone is on edge, but according to Jeff Booth, we are all asking the wrong question.
Your reference frame is a piece of paper, and you're only happy if that reference frame is going up. But if you actually understood what's happening in Bitcoin, you would not be salty at all. You would be feeling incredible.
About 87% of the people that are watching aren't subscribed. If you choose to subscribe, we are able to be getting better guests and to do more in-person conversations. It doesn't cost you anything, it helps us enormously. Become part of the New Era Finance podcast community. Thank you very much. First of all, Jeff, thank you very much for joining the podcast. Welcome to the show. Before we dive deep in everything surrounding free markets and Bitcoin, why is it that almost anyone in the space right now is so salty while Bitcoin is at 85 or 90K?
I can't explain why people are salty. I can say I am not salty in one iota, right? If I answered very simply, because they're measuring just like you did, you're measuring Bitcoin from a piece of paper versus what Bitcoin actually is. And so your reference frame is a piece of paper, and you're only happy if that reference frame is going up relative to the piece of paper. But if you actually understood what's actually happening in Bitcoin and how fast it's expanding and what the emergent properties of it are becoming, you would not be salty at all. You would be feeling incredible.
Is it in terms of negative sentiment or all those things, is it because of the fact that gold has been going so well? Or what is gold telling us that Bitcoin is likely going to follow?
So this is actually why, for me, the question is really a difficult, and we have to break down the question and understand what it would look like.
Sure.
Right. So because you're comparing Bitcoin to a whole bunch of other things, right? And so let's use that analogy, and let's go through that analogy of your frame of reference on what Bitcoin is. And how your frame of reference would determine that outcome or your view of what reality is. So let's imagine your frame of reference is Bitcoin is a technology, right? And if Bitcoin is a technology, that frame of reference would have you constantly looking at the next technology that would replace Bitcoin. And from that point, and that would be a normal thing to think, right? Because most technology moves, and technology is a winner take most until the next technology replaces it, until the next technology replaces it. So you'd fall into traps of Bitcoin's slow, can't do these things. It's open, so it's no privacy. You'd fall into these traps that would take you to other coins, right? So, but it would be a totally normal frame of reference, right? Because we see technology more often than we see protocols, right? So one frame of reference, it's just a blockchain, it's crypto. Crypto is the same as Bitcoin, and there's 10 million Bitcoins. And that would be normal from a whole bunch of people measuring something new that they've never seen before. So not right, not wrong, just normal. Fair? Now take a different frame of reference. Bitcoin is an asset, right? And that frame of reference it's a better asset than gold. Gold is a better asset than Bitcoin. All of these fundamental frame of references would compare things inside that frame of reference, measuring those things from a piece of paper. And where did the piece of paper achieve its value? So if you just say, what is an asset? An asset is everything we've ever been able to measure, because money was broken. We couldn't store our money in money. So we put them in assets. Those assets became centralized over time and then changed to money. So gold constantly rebased or got stolen from you. because it's centralized, and you held your money in, you held your, what you believe your money is, in something else tethered to the asset, right? So if you believed Bitcoin was an asset, you would be likely to hold your money in a derivative asset of Bitcoin, and you'd be likely to price Bitcoin from that derivative asset. It would be totally normal, right? What would that look like to you? You would be comparing against gold, gold, silver, all of these other things all the time, houses, oil, the entire works, and wondering, why is it not going up as fast as this? Why is it going up faster than this? And you'd be stuck in this time frame inside that loop of all these things where money was still broken. You still had a inflationary monetary system that had to consolidate, and all of your actions would be just Bitcoin's faster horse inside that consolidation. And if you did, you would probably take risks in ETFs. You would take risks in everything else because you would be still pricing from within the construct of the construct you've always lived in. Fair?
Yes, that's a very clear explanation. Yeah.
Okay. Now, another explanation, and this is where I am. Bitcoin is a protocol, and what you're measuring as Bitcoin is just layer one of the of a protocol, right? And so what you're measuring as Bitcoin and the store of value is just the first layer. It's an energy-backed protocol that's decentralized and secure. And one thing we know about protocols is they come in layers, and they offer more functionality in layers, and they're winner take all. So if you explore that from a different frame of reference, the frame of reference that I'm in, now you could question this frame of reference, you should question this frame of reference, but if you explored it from that frame of reference and you looked at another protocol like the internet, the beginning of the internet came, I'm going to simplify it a bit for your listeners, but it came at the beginning, TCP/IP, right, which was developed by DARPA in the late 60s. And it's I just simplified that take, but that was the first layer, the transport control protocol, and it was it was so you could keep communication up in a nuclear holocaust, and it was so narrow that you couldn't do anything else. It was just that. But because it was open and anybody could build to it, it came in layers. And what you know of the internet today, what's driving this Riverside that you're on today, that we're on today, is on top of HTTP, that's just 4 layers on top of TCP/IP, that wasn't invented until 1989. And so the internet you know, and all of the mistakes, even from 1989 to today, that people built on top of it, is the same fundamental stack that came in layers, and the same path to get there had all of the same, I'm going to build my own internet, I'm going to build my own this, I'm going to build my own control system. But the open protocol took everything, one internet. If you want to use that internet in China, North Korea, anything else, and if you have a VPN, you can see the entire internet. Fair? Winner take all, not winner take most. And protocols are very different than technologies or assets. And so if you view it as a protocol, and you knew that why they're so mistaken is because in the narrow time frame where Bitcoin is when you're measuring it, it can only do this narrow thing and it can't scale. That would feel right for the time. So if you took a Bitcoin from 2009 to 2020, you really didn't have payments on top. And then that would have this explosion of people who would try to say, Bitcoin isn't good enough, I'm going to do something else, right? Because it can't do this. And then you'd have this different group of people that would be building on top of it, and it would be clunky. It wouldn't work. It wouldn't, and then it would be ossify. And then on top, you'd have a payment layer. That payment layer today is Lightning, Liquid, Arc, Spark, a bunch of others. That now it's moving. It's not just an asset. It's a monetary network, and it's moving and it's expanding crazy across the world. We're investing in companies that are growing so fast And they couldn't grow that fast unless the money was being moved in Bitcoin. So, but if you didn't observe that, if you observed it as an asset, you would be totally blocked from what's actually happening. And so I view it as a protocol that cannot be changed, that is building in layers and adding more functionality, that is repricing all of the other nonsense in the world. But I do understand why people would view it differently, and they're welcome to. But every time they view it differently, they're also taking risks because they're inside the other system.
Yeah, on that, I just like most of those references are coming in from more of an investor perspective that they want to make a return against the US dollar. I'm running my own liquid fund. We have a venture capital, so we have external investors that look at the return against the euro. But the question that I wanted to ask is, Bitcoin in itself continues to grow while the modern finance or the world that we live in continues to decline. But yet so many people are stuck in that previous system and do not understand what Bitcoin actually is. What is it that will turn them around? What trigger do they need?
It's different for every single person. Like I'll bet you there's a whole bunch of people inside your podcast and everything else, so they'll be attracted to different messages of different people. Mm-hmm. That is a mere reflection of their belief system, right? There'll be a whole bunch that will grab hold of those bad people, right, inside of the world. That if you give them, it's not you, it's that person, right? This is why this is going to work. They'll share your video all over the place. The truth is, it's way bigger than that. It's way bigger than this, and it'll touch you, it'll touch me, it'll touch everything else. And this is why I always start with the natural state of the free market is deflation, right? Mm-hmm. Because you know what you just did there by nodding? Your subconscious realized something's true, right? And in the world that was the free market, we have to compete with each other to provide value, and the competition produces the value that we use, and we only choose the things that give us more value. So if it were a free market, you wouldn't have zero inflation, you would have deflation, staggering deflation. And as more productivity, more AI, more robotics, more everything else, you'd have faster and faster deflation. You'd have an exponential abundance of the world. Now, that is true, and it's true because we've never seen that example. It means all of our frame of reference from everything else comes from this other zero-sum game that must extract what I just said. It must consolidate. It must centralize. It must make government bigger. It must blame somebody else. Mm-hmm. And where does the energy from that blame come from? It comes from us participating in that system, trying to make higher returns within that system, from a system that must steal faster and faster and faster because it must stop the free market. And then we want to blame somebody else. We want to look to the rich. We want to look to WEF. We want to look to Davos. We want to look to those people to tell us what to do when we give them all our energy, right? And two systems are incompatible. The free market is incompatible, completely incompatible. I'm not saying you can try to disprove what I just said, but it's incompatible with a system that lends money into existence. Why? Because the money that is lent into existence requires interest forever, and it can't let prices fall. So now that brings up a whole bunch of other things. It starts a challenge in our mind, or the cognitive dissonance in our mind, because we're inside this other system, and it can't be us, right? But where is the calculator app in GDP? Where is a bunch of these free AIs in GDP? Where is that going? Because in that world, prices fall to the marginal cost of production. So how could prices be going up? Because the same rate as this should be happening, this system has to consolidate. And we turn to this system because we're paying everything inside that system. And we turn to it to try to solve the problem. That a system that's lending money into existence and has to exponentially lend more money into existence, fraud, corruption, everything else, is that system. And we're in it, trying to outpace the returns in it. Okay, so now it's a big thought, right? Mm-hmm. That we're all participants in this. And you could say this, if Bitcoin was decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy, and if it stayed decentralized and secure, you could do your own work. Will it stay decentralized and secure? But what would it be pricing? And it would be pricing the first free market that ever existed. And relative to it, over a long enough time frame, all prices would fall forever. It wouldn't care about this make-believe system or your beliefs of it. It would just, every 10 minutes, you'd have a new block bounded by energy. And this system would be, and we would want to measure this new thing because we'd never seen it from our previous frame of reference. And so we would be subject to all the bullshit and all the people telling us things over here from this new thing. We would be subject to, this new thing can't be true. We can't allow deflation because we've never allowed deflation. It would be, this new thing must be bad for the environment. It'd be, this new thing, this new thing is, the risk is quantum computers. And every time we bought into that risk, what we'd really be saying is this: I have no agency. Those smart people from the bullshit system know more than I do. But if you're actually living in the protocol, you know it's all nonsense. Every 10 minutes for 17 years, you have a new block that's imposing reality, that's imposing the free market. Not might be imposing, imposing.
Before we continue with this episode, I would like to show you something really cool, which is that our partner OKX has announced the OKX card, which is a digital card which is fully into your account on OKX, where you can just use it for any buys that you do if it is connected to MasterCard. So it can be your groceries, it can be flight tickets, anything you want. And the cool fact is you can actually get up to 20% in cashback until the last day of this month. After that, you're going to get 4% in cashback. But everything you buy through the app this month, you will receive up to 20% in cashback. And then on top of that, you're also going to get up to 100 euros in Bitcoin. Find the link in the description below and sign up today. Now, let's get back to the episode. I mean, when I started diving into Bitcoin, I was still, during my studies in economics, I was studying all those models, older models that I felt like most of them are completely wrong in current finance or modern finance. And then I bumped into Bitcoin and I was like, yes, this is what it should be. Dived into the Austrian school and all those things. And I kind of get the feeling that this was in 2016, 2017, that since COVID, more and more people start to realize what's really happening to them. And instead of blaming, they step out of the current system in whatever way they're doing that. And if we look at recent events, especially for Europe, where governments are stepping in and are saying, hey, I want to tax the unrealized gains that you have for your Bitcoin versus the euro, is putting even more people on that pendulum where they want to swap into the actual new system because they see that they are trying to control everyone and try to not let you go over towards the actual good system, because by doing this, you're constantly being pulled back.
And so, and that's exactly what's happening. So what ends up happening, what is the thing that's driving you inside the other system? And Michael, but each one of us has to ask, why are we still in it? Why are we spending in it? Why are we everything else and blaming other people? If this other thing is true, wouldn't we want to move our time, energy, and everything else to create value in the new system? So it can't be other people, it's us. Mm-hmm. And each person along that journey, we think Bitcoin is okay. You're either a Bitcoiner or you're not a Bitcoiner. But the truth is, most Bitcoiners are still caught measuring the system in the old way. And so all they're really saying is, I'm going to make more money than all those other stupid people, right? And those other, so if you were in Venezuela and you held the US dollar rather than Venezuelan currency, you would escape the massive devaluation of the Venezuelan currency, and you would look like you were so much smarter than the other people. But what if you built a business in the US currency and were adding more US all the time by providing value? You would look crazy better than the person just holding the currency because you were providing value in that. Now, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is this new thing that is not just the asset, it's protocol. So it is the currency. So what if everybody today lived in Venezuela? They just don't know it. It's a relative debasement. And you were building value in something that couldn't be taken. Now, the governments, of course, would say, that's dangerous. You shouldn't do that. We're going to tax the unrealized gains. We're going to do all of these things. And that system would turn into more and more of a surveillance state where you feeding that surveillance state, thinking it's somebody else or yelling at the person. Where do they get their power at the top? From you yelling at them, right? Because all your transactions are inside that system. For people that truly knew they were outside of it, what would they do? They would build the layers on top of Bitcoin to provide the exit ramp in privacy, security, everything else. And they would denominate their balance sheets in Bitcoin, and they would be invisible to the surveillance state. That's what's happening. And while most people don't believe that that's happening yet, because they're still caught in a paradigm where if it's an asset and the base layer, people can find you and so that system you're talking about, I would say 99.9% of humans still live in, and probably still about 80% of Bitcoiners still live in, right? They don't realize they're part of the control system yet still. They haven't changed anything. But there's so many people that have already realized it and are transacting in a different system and are building privacy layer onto this and building the fundamental layers on top, that they're truly in a different paradigm. That's the paradigm I'm talking from. And the paradigm, and your first question about price, I don't care one iota. If you saw what I see every day and the people that are building this and what the abundance looks like and the circular economies around the world that are exploding and the amount of transactions that are moving here, the last thing you would care about is price in the piece of paper. Mm-hmm. So when people ask that question, at least for me, because I'm not in that paradigm anymore, but I understand I was, and when I first understood Bitcoin, I was measuring it in the piece of paper. And we think, and I'm not saying I'm better, I'm just further along on a journey, trying to disprove that journey and then deciding which system I want to pay my attention to, knowing that the existing system has to co-opt all my attention, and it comes from me.
For people who are listening and you've been going through the entire journey, I completely understand where you're coming from. Well, no, not completely. I try to learn as much as I can from you when it comes to this journey. And it's something that I personally would love to do. But there are many hurdles preventing me of doing it. And one of them is, for instance, that we run several companies here that are being valued in the euro. Or it could be stepping out of the entire society and just living somewhere else. Or it could be paying in Bitcoin everywhere. I don't want to pay in Bitcoin. I want to make more money and then store it in Bitcoin. You see?
So, yeah, can I
go on.
So if you and you're in Amsterdam, right?
Yeah.
So you're using the euro.
Correct. Yeah.
If you moved to a different country, right? The initial move for a different country and a different currency would be constantly measuring in euro and the new currency, right? And that would be hard on your brain because you'd be creating a mental change back and forth to that new currency, but you'd be comparing it to what you'd always known. That fair?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or if somebody I just moved from Canada to the US. Now I'm in Bitcoin, right? I measure everything in Bitcoin. But if I moved from Canada to the US and said Canadian dollars 70 cents US or something like that, and US dollars, so the US dollar stronger, then everything would appear more expensive in the US to me. And I would be making that, I can't pay for that because it's just a relative frame of reference, right? And so what you're talking about, and same thing in Bitcoin, is a different frame of reference that is repricing the world. And that mental calculation going from what you value the world from, a piece of paper that you know is just an arbitrary value that is based on manipulation, isn't saying anything about Bitcoin. It's saying something about you. And that creates that cognitive dissonance because we don't want it to be us. I need to make more money because all my stuff is inside that piece of paper. So I'm going to make more money. I'm going to convert some of it to Bitcoin, and I'm going to and I'm going to be caught in this cycle and everything else. But as you move more and more in the foundational currency, and that might look different for each different person, but I'll say in ego death, right? In our venture firm, I know it's way higher than this, but the rate of return of Bitcoin against the existing system is a 40 to 45% IRR, right? So but just by holding Bitcoin in self-custody against the existing system, you can achieve a 40 to 45% IRR. So where would you invest? I certainly wouldn't invest anything under 40. So that's the risk-free rate of the world. And you don't have to even operate in it. You just have to hold it. And you're part of the entire free market doing work for you inside a network that is creating abundance. And just by owning it, you're part of that network. So now, how would you increase that? So that in other words, that is the risk-free rate of the world because you can hold it in self-custody. And I want to qualify that. That's a risk-free rate of the world, assuming Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, right? So if it stays decentralized and secure, it is not maybe, it is the risk-free rate of the world. And so you should do all of the work. Will it stay decentralized and secure? How do I make sure? How am I part of that? But let's just say, I believe it stays decentralized and secure and it's impossible to break. And I believe that because I've done so much work to try to break it, that I've moved my time into supporting it and understanding that risk. But that's the risk-free rate of return. Now, so what do we do at Ego Death Capital? We take fiat money from LPs. We know what we have to beat, the bar, and we would never make an investment that we didn't think we could beat that risk-free rate of return, because you're taking risk in a venture capital company. You're taking a bunch of risk. You're taking risk on us. Can we beat that return? You're taking risk on I'm putting this money into into something that can create the future. So where would we make higher return than that? We could only make higher return than that on companies that were accelerating the Bitcoin adoption and using their balance sheets and accruing more Bitcoin as a result of providing value in the free market. And so what do we see in most of in a bunch of the companies that we funded? Instead of going in the previous world where VCs go seed, series A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and they're still not profitable, and they go public, and essentially what they're saying is this dog's never going to hunt, right? I need to sell my interest to the next VC, the next billions of dollars that keeps on getting vaporized, and underneath that, trillions of dollars being printed to keep that system going. What we see is something totally different. What we see is a lot of times our seed investments turn into profits in Bitcoin, or Series A turn into profitable Bitcoin companies, and they're growing so fast, and they're adding Bitcoin to the balance sheets. They don't need us anymore. They don't need Series B, C, D, E, F, G, because their profits are denominated. So they're accruing more Bitcoin on their balance sheets by expanding a different paradigm. Where would that value be unlocked? That value would be unlocked by all the problems created in the existing paradigm, right? The problems that everybody's yelling at, Bitcoin's not private, this is I can't use it as a currency. Those are problems would be entrepreneurs' dream to be able to go solve by building different layers and add it under. So the last thing I do is complain about the existing system. I can't do anything about it. I can do something about accelerating the ecosystem that I want to live in, or the protocol that I want to live in, and we get paid extraordinarily well by providing value in the free market.
It's I think it's also the best way of turning a negative into a positive. Whether there is a negative or a positive is also a question. But I'm a venture capitalist myself, and the past few weeks I've seen valuations going through the roof, raises that have been happening for insane numbers. We've had, I think, like 2,000 or 3,000 protocols that came to us for an investment, and I can say 99.9% was just ridiculous in terms of how they propose it or what valuation they raise on. How do you see venture capitalists within the Bitcoin ecosystem? Because I think you're investing into layer 2s on top of Bitcoin that are payment providers or building any other infrastructure to strengthen the entire system.
So that's exactly what we see. We see this fiat mindset, and all of the stuff that you would be saying. These are stupid valuations, and I actually like. So Raoul Pal was probably, and he'll talk about blockchain and crypto and nonsense and everything else, and that takes a frame of reference. It has to be another coin, and here's what I'm going to do, and I might tether that to Bitcoin, right? And these valuations are exploding because they're all fiat mindsets. Bitcoin doesn't need another. When I say protocol, I mean it comes in layers, and it doesn't need another coin. It already has privacy embedded in it on layer 3. It already has Lightning. These are, and you could go on and you could build onto Nostr, Bitcoin, Lightning, Fediment, zero cost, and create whatever you want with zero cost. And that open network is exploding. And what's happening over in what you're seeing in venture, in fiat venture, is a whole bunch of people trying to take it back in their thing, their centralized control coin that they tell the world is going to. And what you're seeing, and why when you said 99.9% of it, because we see it all too, it's just ludicrous. Mm-hmm. If you do foundation, it's so outrageous, but people keep on spending these monies at these crazy valuations with a no idea foundationally where it goes. And all of these things that we've seen, all of them, it is really my belief system of a control system that you live in. And Bitcoin doesn't care. It's decentralized, it's secure. There's no throat to choke. So you have two different versions of reality emerging, and the one based on energy and truth and is just repricing everything else. And the money that's going into the other stuff has already gone to money heaven.
True. How do you see the impact going into the next, or the impact of AI in venture investing in the next 5 to 10 years? I would suppose that it's going to be less VCs are required in order to drive adoption and innovation.
Yeah. So I don't know if you actually read my book, but
I did a part, yeah.
Yeah. So I talked about 7 years ago what that explosion of AI would look like, and the exponential change, and that exponential change in AI and prices falling to the marginal cost of production, moving to zero. That's what you're seeing, right? You're seeing the AI getting better and better and better at a crazy rate, doubling faster than every 6 months, at a cost that keeps on getting lower and lower and lower. And why will every company use AI, or why will you use AI, or why do you not even need the company? Because it'll give you better results. And then the companies, it won't just be the LLMs. A bunch of those smaller results are already free in tiny models, right? That you can put on your desktop, and then you can string together with other agents that are completely free to get more and more work done. And you'll have an unbundling of a SaaS software that you've spent. I've already created on an agent in a weekend a better CRM than Salesforce that I used to use for years and years and years, and all the cost. Right? Me myself with no coding experience. Now I understand technology very deeply, and I've been deep on AI for a long, long time. But vibe coding is there. Some of the stuff that, when are you going to release this podcast?
In a few weeks.
Okay. So by the time you release this podcast, it's already created. I just haven't, I'm going to put it out on Monday. I've created an AI agent that is me, can answer everything that will live on my Twitter account, because I don't want to keep up with the chaos of everybody else's on Twitter arguing with bots about, and they're already arguing with bots, and they think their time is valuable, and it's centralizing and centralizing. I'm not on Twitter. I haven't been on for 2 years because I did that time is just a total waste of my time. But I thought, what if I create this AI agent of myself, deploy it there, right? For the people that want to argue with bots all day, they can argue with Jeff AI bot, right? And then for the people who want real relationship and real, they can follow me on Noster, and they can move their time as well. But it'll create, and people start to observe, oh my God, this machine I'm in that's taking my attention, I'm feeding the machine, right? But what did we start with? What did you say? Where does AI go? The best AI investment is Bitcoin, because it forces the productivity of all competition, AI, robots, everything, into a ledger that can't be manipulated, bounded to energy. So all of that productivity gain is flowing to the people who hold Bitcoin. And I want to be really careful about that. Flowing to people who own Bitcoin in self-custody. Because if you're holding Bitcoin in somebody else's self-custody, at some point you are going to get rug pulled. It won't be your Bitcoin. It's not your Bitcoin. It's somebody else. It's a claim on your Bitcoin. Just like if you were holding gold in somebody else's vault, at some point in time, they reprice it.
Before we continue, this is the chart of Ethereum. And if you were holding Ethereum for the past 4 years, you would have had no return. And that's why I've built MN Fund, an AFM registered crypto fund that profits from volatility. Whether the markets are going down, sideways or up, in any market circumstance, we can trade the markets with volatility. And that's why we have 3 pillars. We have strong base assets, we have the volatility trading, which is high frequency, and we have OTC trading, which is more institutional. And by doing that, we have outperformed Bitcoin by more than 35% over the past 8 months. Crypto is super risky, and I've been seeing that over the past decade. I've been trading the markets, and that's why we wanted to create a solution where it's becoming more relaxed and more easier to invest into those markets. For more information, reach out towards me on the socials or go to mnfund.nl and fill in the contact form. We are here happy to assist you. What is your opinion then on Saylor's his strategy?
So I can both really like Saylor. He's a friend of mine, and understand he helps a whole bunch of people understand Bitcoin. So he can be he can be an entry point for people understanding Bitcoin, and I can have a disagreement with somebody that I like on a foundational structure, and Bitcoin, and if so, I can allow both things to exist without attacking the person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I saw Bitcoin as an asset and only an asset, I would want to accumulate as much as possible at the expense of everybody else. From that system, I would want to integrate it into the financial system. You still have a broken financial system on top, but it would create new kings. And a whole bunch of, nothing would have changed in the world. It's still not a free market, right? Because prices, it would be still an inflationary monetary system, a broken market with new kings that controlled all the money. And from that, and from that system, eventually Bitcoin would centralize because of our actions within it, trying to make more money within that. But again, fear, greed, markets, everything else. I understand why a whole bunch of people would want to do that. But it cannot be both over a long term. So in that world, if it were only that, Bitcoin will fail because it would be centralized. And then what would happen is all of the governments where it was centralized and everything else would come to the nodes and say, here's the deal, here's the Bitcoin that only matters. It's only US coin on top of Bitcoin, right? And it would not look like Bitcoin does today. And it would not be this decentralized secure protocol that it was emerging as money too. So I can understand why that looks like that, why people would do it, and everybody would be feeding it faster and faster and faster and investing in that, right? Because they would think that that was a better Bitcoin. They would be taking risks on their own Bitcoin. At the same time as that would be happening, by the way, we have to go through these things, right? The structure of, if we've always lived in a zero-sum game, to get to an infinite game that is based on the free market where all competition provides value to all people. I'm not saying utopian. I'm saying we'll always have problems. So our job is to solve problems in the free market for other people in that in that world. Then it would have to go through all of our biases and broken minds and everything else that we've always lived in to get to here. So this is a construct that has to happen. A whole bunch of people are going to take more risk there. But as that happens and more people move into money, holding in self-custody, paying in self-custody, building privacy tools on top of it, when these people come to try to change protocol, what do you think is going to happen if enough people are in the protocol? They're going to say, fuck off, right? And what will happen when that chain split inevitably happens, right? Just like it's happened before, like if you take Bcash and Bitcoin, the longest chain is the chain, right? And so in 2017, we had this when a bunch of big blockers and what would happen in the big blocks is it would have centralized. And a bunch of Bitcoiners, and at that time, it was actually Bitcoin was more centralized. Mining was more centralized. Mining equipment was more centralized. And what that looked like, the fight for control of Bitcoin, was a huge fight. And at that time, if you had Bitcoin, you got two. You got one in Bcash, you got one. And one went to effectively zero, and one is where we are today. The longest chain survived. So what will happen on the centralization if you know that you're protected from it and you're a node? Because most of the people centralizing don't run nodes. Most of the people centralizing don't care about privacy. Most of the people so what will happen to Bitcoin when that system tries to attack the system that's decentralized? And what you can see is it will probably go to zero. And if you have all your money in that system, you will go to zero with it.
I think that how I see it is that there are those two systems, and it's been a very long period of time that it was nearly impossible to build on top of a Bitcoin. The past 5 years, things are completely changing. Before that, some stuff has been tried out. Lightning has been tried out as well, and it's quickly accelerating right now. On the other hand, within the old system, you have a gazillion amount of stablecoins building a technology that is trying to bridge in between. And the good parts of this old system are all being used within Bitcoin. And now, in the past few weeks, And that's where I wanted to go to. The markets have seen the stance of banks against stablecoins. They want to kill it. So my question is, what are the risks for the new system in terms of Bitcoin? What is the government, what are the banks trying to do to prevent people going from the old system into the free market?
Yeah, so here's the interesting thing. Stablecoins isn't the free market.
No, that I know, but they try to be
So
one.
so what is a stable coin? Where does the stability in a stable coin come from?
The same as with the old financial system.
In other words, it comes from instability. It comes from theft, right? Because what you can see, what you can demonstrate perfectly, is the U.S. dollar isn't stable, right? It's stable. It gains its stability by losing money to Bitcoin. That's where it gains its stability, to guarantee you losses against Bitcoin. So if you have and I laugh at these names because you couldn't, what ends up happening in these names is like the Patriot Act, you're supposed to, it actually hurts you. The Inflation Reduction Act, all of these things that you believe it's somebody else are actually the exact opposite of what it really is. A stable coin is a lie. It's an existing monetary system designed to extract from you, and you feel safe within it because of its stability. Well, you know that you're losing money against Bitcoin, and you choose to transact, and that's what I mean. People get sucked into this because their relative view isn't Bitcoin, which is so outside their relative view. They're living in a different currency. And the U.S. appears stable, U.S. dollar or stable coin denominated in U.S. dollars appears stable to their currency. So they'll be tricked, right? And they'll centralize, and they won't be in Bitcoin, and they'll centralize into the surveillance state. Now, that surveillance state, too, has a problem with the banks that lend money into existence have a real problem with that because it's a different model. Right, it starts to, and all these monopolies are fighting for who gets to control you. You don't have to listen to any of it. There is a new system, a new paradigm emerging, and if you're in Bitcoin and spending in Bitcoin, Lightning, Liquid, on top of it, and especially if you're moving into privacy tech like Fedimint or Cashew, Federations or Nostr and some, you're inside a different system that is operating in parallel but outside of the system, completely outside of the system. If you're in a circular economy and you're buying your meat and vegetables, everything else from people who are doing this, they are living outside of this system. Yes, there's still integration points. Yes, the integration points are going to try to co-opt your attention back into the other system faster and faster and faster, but you don't have to. But it's that so that point on your measurement, right? You're feeding that and from that, because would it be easier for me to tell everybody, yeah, your fairy tale of life prices naturally go up, right? And it would be way easier for me to create something that matches people's perspective, that there's some other enemy, that it's this leader rather than this leader, and we're going to make prices go up a little slower when the only reason prices go up is broken money. Mm-hmm. Right? Only reason. They can't go down in a free market.
For people that are listening again, and me and myself as well, I know that in Amsterdam there are not many shops where you're able to pay with Bitcoin. In Arnhem there's a big community where there are like 60 stores where you can do it. But if you want to say, hey, I want to step into that new system, but it's nearly impossible to pay in Bitcoin anywhere.
So I love this question. And this is the question that kind of, so I've said on many podcasts, I did the same thing. And this is why I'm not saying I'm better or worse than anyone else. I'm just further along in a journey that I had to understand my own, my own idiosyncrasies or my own hypocrisies to move here. But on my way through, I wrote a book about what would happen. I talked about this all over the world. I investigated Bitcoin really deeply. I started talking about it all over the world. People were asking me, business leaders, presidents, all over the world, or my opinion on this. I woke up one night realizing that 90% of my time, 95% of my time, all of my boards, all of my everything else, all my technology businesses were in the other system, right? And I was talking about this system like I was spending 100% of my time in it. But really what it was is I had a hedge against the system collapse that I was making stronger through my actions of the system collapse, and I had a hedge over in Bitcoin. And at the time, it felt like why didn't those people understand it? And I was operating from that mindset. How could those people not understand it? Realizing that I was one of those people. Right? I didn't understand it. And it wasn't until that hit me personally at how could the world actually move here without my work to move it here and my energy to move it here. If I was telling myself a lie. I was telling myself it was everyone else and it was me. And so that's why we created Ego Death Capital, so I could move my time to the system that I said I wanted to support. And for every single person, it's going to be a different journey. And I'm not going to hire and mighty on a hill, and whatever you want to be on the journey, it's up to you. But you just said something about the stores. Why don't the stores do it? I can't do it till the stores do it. I'm watching people living in this and then choosing to tell stores that they frequent. And then those stores opening up and taking it and infecting that around. So they're becoming both the map and the territory. I'm watching people move their time, and every single person I watch that moves their time, their lives get better and better and better because they're impacting other people in a way that makes their lives better and better from an honest system. And I mean that if you looked at my network of the people that have moved this journey, those are the people that everybody looks to as leaders today. But they were once just like me. They were once just like, and they were spending, we all are, right? We're living in this other system. And so the choice is yours, right? The choice is, if this is true and you're spending 100% of your energy in the other system, maybe move 10% and try to do something that when they say proof of work, right? You moving your time is the proof of work that will, and you could do anything, because especially where you are, Europe is it's going off the rails, and people are yelling. They're spending all of their time inside that system that's going off the rail and not taking agency for it going off the rails. So that would provide a crazy opportunity for you to move some of your time. If you don't want to move it all right away, don't move it all. Draw a box around your time to be really honest with your time. Where does it go? Where am I hearing media? What am I doing? What am I amplifying and everything else? And take 10% of it to learn what's happening here. Through that learning, and then contribute to what's happening here, you'll see your life change.
I agree on that. I think you don't need to do it entirely immediately. That's not what you've done. I know that a lot of people from my generation are done with how the world works and try to escape to go to a different country and live there, but they stick and remain in the old system. But once they make that decision, they start to be more open towards things like Bitcoin as well. So it's like every person that I've seen go onto that journey have not come back.
That's so that comes down to, and Michael, I think that's a really great way of framing that. The same here. The deeper you go on the journey too, it's not just holding Bitcoin. Like there's a layer of this that a whole bunch of Bitcoiners would say this, but the same is true for the next layer. That people move to the next layer and spend in it and contribute in it and build on it. The same is, and the next layer, they look at the layer before that was them before, and they go, how can't those people understand it? And then this layer looks at the people in fiat and wonders why those people can't understand it. And what we're just describing is, it's not outside of it. It is us. And that's why what gives me so much resolve to why I know this is happening and why it's going to stay decentralized and secure, because I know the people all over the world how fast this is moving that are already way beyond what we're talking about. And it's abundant. They're living in abundance. It's a totally different mindset. They can't even perceive. I couldn't perceive the world I live in today from the world that I used to live in. I wouldn't be able. It would be impossible for me to explain what it looks like today to my previous self.
What advice would you give to someone that's on this journey, or how did you manage to do it? Because I can also understand that during that phase, you started to be more disconnected with the old friends that you've had, and you start probably not even.
No, because I don't see it as one thing that in Bitcoin I think it's easy to do is you believe you're smarter, that you see something no one else sees, and it can come across as I'm better. I don't see that. I'm no better. I have a certain genius. But every single person I meet has a certain genius. There isn't. I'm connected to everyone, and I can see their genius even if I disagree with 99% of what they do, and I don't need them to change. It's up to them to decide when to change. Just like if somebody pushed on me from my previous reality and said, you have to change and I felt like I was forced to change, or that person was smarter, or if they were trying to be somebody else, I would actually probably push back harder. So I just realized this is the world. For this to be true, this has to go through all of us, all of the craziness, as we ourselves change. And so I can allow somebody to be perfectly who they are, not hurt anything in me, because why would it bother me how they want to live their life?
Fair. What outside of Bitcoin, what type of like philosophers or books or stuff are you reading if you have some free time?
I read about 50 books a year, maybe even more than that now. And so I have a list of books that I read, or I would say keep a list of books that have impacted me through the years. On my website is probably the easier way to do it, but and it's a pretty extensive list. And so the website is at jeffbooth.ca, and so people could go there. But anything, I'd say for me, things that it's constantly learning, and when I see things in other people, I realize those things must be in me too. And so I look for things that are incompatible with that. We're like, okay, why did that trigger me? Right? And when I watch somebody kind of create their own reality from their belief system, and it's true for them, and it's so true for them that they'll defend it at all, and they won't look deeper, then I wonder if everyone else acts like that and their world is just a mirror image of that belief system, then that must be true for me too. And so I try to take, it's interesting to go deeper and resolve the conflicts in me. So instead of, and that opens my mind to learn more. And so it's an ever ending. Like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yes, that's true. But also, while listening to you, I'm resonating with the things that you've been saying, because I've been reading about this, or I've been thinking about this myself, and it reactivates me to keep on improving my own self-thinking and just like keep on learning. And I mean, I'm still 32 years old, so I've got enough time to learn.
You're way ahead. You're way ahead of me.
No, I'm not.
No, it's fun. It's funny. Somebody, because I wrote in my book, I said, I said, error correction is learning, right? And that's what computers do. That's what our biological computers do. We error correct, and we get better and better. We stand on the shoulders of greatness that have error corrected before us, and we fix that error, we find another error, and we're constantly error correcting. That's what you do through any sport. That's what you do. You're getting better and better and better and better. And the more you practice, the more you error correct. It seems the things that seem natural, but then you miss kind of because you can't keep up with all these changes. You're blind to some of that error correction, or you don't believe it's you. And so somebody asked me, okay, because people could see that was fundamentally true, and they asked me, then what's wisdom? And I said a lifetime of error correction. And so when I said you were in front of me on the journey, I don't think I would have known these things at your age.
Well, thank you for that. But I agree. I mean, our modern society is not built upon trial and error or on failures. And I'd rather, within my teams as well, I'd rather want them to make mistakes, which they understand and which they learn from in order to improve. Because then we all get better. And if we just live in that sort of little box and are not allowed to make or go out of that box and make mistakes, there's not going to be any improvement at all.
So one thing, and I think everybody could relate to what I'll say here is, and it was true for me, and I've tried to make it less land over time, but we want to take credit for everything that's great in our lives because people tell us what we're great at. And as soon as something's not great, it has to be somebody else. We remove our agency. And so you can learn from that. If that's true, you know how you just laughed? Then you can take that as that negative variable for any time you're triggered by it has to be somebody else. Why are you triggered? And it's probably you too. And when you incorporate that, you learn at a crazy rate all the things that you never saw before that were also you.
Yeah, that's like it's this. The way that I've been laughing right now is because this is what I figured around 4 to 5 years ago, where I was constantly blaming other ones for my own mistakes. So then you start to recognize the mistakes you've been making, and then you start to peel off who you actually are and what you stand for. And that's like a constant journey of life where even though you start to learn on that, you still have sometimes you are pulled back into that same type of behavior. But the more that you start to learn, the faster you can come over that actual reaction.
Right. And then the reaction goes away, and you start living in abundance, and you realize all of those people, it was always you.
Let's make that a conclusion of today. It was a fascinating conversation, and I would like to thank you for your time. I hope to have you on the show one day in person where we can have a deeper conversation. But thank you very much, and good luck on the journey in growing the entire Bitcoin ecosystem and also the knowledge about Bitcoin that you have and spreading that out towards more people.
Really great being here with you, Michael. Thanks.